So it's one thing that you also have to, before we leave this slide, if I have had legislators that are very firmly for the death penalty, and they dig in. So, I mean, when I was lobbying, it was the Illinois Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. So it's not like I was sneaking up on anybody about my position or what I wanted them to do. So some legislators really dug in. They got very, very defensive and kind of were offended that, they are human, and it's sometimes you got to remember that while they have your respect and work hard to run the state, they're human too. And a lot of times, if you're pushing really hard about something that is morally wrong, it could come off that you're judging them in ways they're not going to be happy with. So it's just important to be careful. If they're a firm no, I like to kind of just say, look, I just want to keep the conversation open. I understand that. I actually don't waste a lot of time. If they're going to be a very long no, I've had the experience they want to talk about it, and in some ways it seems like they almost want to rationalize it to themselves. But it's just important to keep your cool, get what you have out of there. If you wanted to get the information, they're a firm no, they haven't given you anything else, move on. So next I want to move on to the next slide. And I really want to talk about how much time it takes. So that last slide was really on the activists. This one is really on the lobbyists. So lobbyists, why don't we just have a lobbying campaign? Why wouldn't that be more effective if we were just trying to get the vote and to get legislators? The important thing is that it takes a lot of time to lobby. Legislators, they're in committees, they're in session, they're reading bills, they're meeting with other constituents, they're meeting with other, other issues. And you're not the only lobbyist and the only issue that's going on in Wichita. So it's really important to know that there's a lot of noise going on, and you may not get in there to have that meeting. So doing a lobbying only strategy takes a lot of time. So it's something that this could easily last 5 years before a bill gets the momentum that you're getting the meetings you need to get, and you're getting to do the follow-up. Many times it's not a simple matter of where are you, Senator, on this bill? I'm a yes or I'm a no. They will more likely be a yes, maybe, or a no with certain reasons. And if any of those change, they're going to change their position, and you need to be able to follow up on that. So having that all take time is one of the reasons we use this inside-out strategy, having pressure from the outside community as well. If we can go on to the next slide. So really, this next slide really kind of talks about that dialogue of talking to legislators and kind of getting them to support and repeal. Like I said before, when I use the example of talking to legislators that are firmly, for the death penalty, I really tried to keep positive and really kept the door open. It was something, it wasn't easy. I'm really against the death penalty, and some of the reasons that some of my legislators in Illinois that were for the death penalty were, frankly, personally very offensive. But it was something of just being able to realize, just take a deep breath. I don't live in their communities for a very specific reason, and that's not the game. The whole thing is really to make sure you win the bigger picture, and you need to let your ego go and just take that deep breath, then move on to the next legislator. So that's what this slide really is about. You see you have the hard no on one side of the spectrum and the hard yes on the other side of the spectrum. Most legislators are right in the middle. Even your yeses, if the right things happen, could change their mind. So it's important to always keep thanking your supporters. The firm no's, I've had somebody that they actually stopped me on the stairs when I was carrying things. So just imagine the most uncomfortable time possible. I had this very firmly no legislator stop me and start talking about, he was an attorney, a case that happened. And it was the typical death penalty case. A crime happened on the south side of Chicago with a light-skinned black guy. And they picked up his client, who was on the north side, and extremely a very dark-skinned guy. So it was something, and they even had video. And it just blew this legislator's mind. Is like, they didn't look alike. They didn't, weren't in the same area. They had fingerprints. They had video. It still took weeks to get this guy off a death penalty case. He's like, there's something wrong here. So just know that it is a spectrum with absolutely every legislator, and you really have to think about how are you going to get them to yes. So the main thing I'm trying to say is don't write anybody off. And one of the things that's important about that is you don't really want to push in public. If a legislator is firmly on your side, you never know who else is around you. Who else is in the room that they have to, also appease. Now, it's one thing if you're always kind and say nice things and wave and say hi. That's another thing. But if you're thanking publicly for support, or if you're saying, hey, Senator, I wondered where you are on the death penalty, if they say no in public, that's going to be harder to walk back, because their public image is how they get elected, and they're extremely sensitive about that. So when you are pushing, you can see where people are, but be very conscious of who you're where you're talking, and the kind of conversation you're having. So if it is going to be something where you want to get into very private details, it might be time to say, let's talk in your office, or can we set up a time? So just, taking everything to that one step further. This isn't, I guess this whole training is really to take you from the science and this is how you lobby part to the art, to think about that next level of how do you, really get to, push that legislator to yes and be compelling. So you also want to just make sure that you're, being positive and, trying to really get where they feel or what they're concerned with. Because if the hardest thing is if they're not telling you the truth or won't open up to you, you're never going to be able to move them. So the first thing you have to do is, develop some sort of relationship, even if you disagree, to really find out where are the points that you can get in. And the tough thing for me to learn during that was I learned that, I was the wrong messenger a couple times. I found out that they were concerned about how it would be in their district, or concerned from a group that, we didn't have a lot of allies in. But when we were able to kind of do that organizing and get into these unlikely allies, having them talk and follow up my conversation is what changed them over to become our advocates and to be more comfortable supporting abolition. Can we go on to the next slide? So back to the activists and the local constituents. So you can see how the inside strategy, it takes a lot of time, because just getting somebody from maybe to yes is a lot of work. And if folks are in the maybe no, to get them to move on the spectrum takes a lot of time. How you cut down that timeline is really making sure the folks in the community, you all, are really speaking to the legislators and pushing them forward. They have it's kind of remarkable, the change in attitude that a legislator has from being in the Capitol to being in their, in their home, that in their home office, seeing the people that they've known for years. So it's really just a matter of, they're not around other legislators. They're a little bit more relaxed. So once you get the in-district visit, that's another way to really get a legislator to really listen and hear what you're saying, and also do a longer meeting where you can, bring in people that were on death row wrongly, to get in murder victim family members, and to really, speak kind of one-on-one to the legislator and move them forward. So it's something of, well, and the same rule does apply. Like, I mean, when you're in the district office, you're having an office meeting. If you're out in public, you're very much out in public. But to be able to kind of use this public way to push a legislator forward really is going to kind of help that inside game. If we can go on to the next slide. That being said, you're clearly outnumbered. There's so many new legislators throughout all of Kansas, and to get to all of them is extremely tough. And that's where the inside strategy helps. You find the legislators that are, somewhat on your side or have other issues that could move them to yes, or you're finding the people that are hard-nosed, and you shouldn't waste your time driving all the way out to rural Kansas just to have a meeting. So you need to be able to find the folks and be specific of where they are. So this is an area where, absolutely everybody can help in doing those district meetings. You can help outside your own district. All of these ways kind of fit into the strategy. So, I mean, the main takeaway is there are ways that you can help out today on the campaign. And going on to the last slide on strategy, this really sums up the basics of the inside-out strategy. So the lobbyist helps narrow down the districts for the in-district activists. The activists, are pressuring and having meetings with the lobbyists, or excuse me, with the legislators, following up many times on conversations lobbyists have. Then that pushes the legislator further along the spectrum toward yes. And then working with the staff to really narrow down, which legislators need to be worked on in district, which ones need, focused on meetings in the Capitol, which ones need more information. That should get you all the way to make sure that you can pass abolition in Kansas. And Lori, I'm turning it over to you.
Lori, I wonder if we could take a minute. We have a question on strategy from Craig, and I was hoping that maybe Mary and Jeremy could speak to it. So I'm just going to read Craig's question. He asks, is there any thought to promoting a constitutional amendment in Kansas to ban capital punishment? Otherwise, we could win repeal in the next few years and then see it come back 10 years or 20 years later, whenever the next major crime of the decade occurs.
Mary, do you want to go, or do you want me to answer that? Or I've got stuff to say on it if you want.
You can go first, and then I'll go next.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, that's a really good, valid way to do it. I mean, I hear the point of the death penalty coming back. The only parts of caution I would say is that, I've run, that would be a statewide campaign. I've run elections campaigns, I've run issue campaigns, and they're extremely difficult. I had the advantage of a lot of money in the campaign. Y'all don't have that with the death penalty. And it's a lot of, if you're able to pass something, a statewide constitutional amendment, you more than likely could have passed a bill earlier. It's much easier in my experience to pass a bill than it is to pass a constitutional amendment. Now, that being said, you have a very valid point about not bringing back the death penalty. I think that's something that maybe after you've abolished the death penalty, it would be time to revisit that strategy. I still think it's going to be extremely difficult to get a constitutional amendment to take it off, especially with all the states abolishing the death penalty and the momentum clearly moving toward getting rid of the death penalty in the United States. It may not need to go that far. I will tell you that in Illinois, like, we have I guess kind of a minimal campaign still running, because every year they try and bring back the death penalty. And every year it's horrible murders, because there's Chicago and a lot of other things that are pretty tragic. But it's really a matter of, being able to keep the constant message you have to pass abolition is the same things that are going to keep it away.
I agree with Jeremy, and I will tell you that the constitutional amendment route is much more difficult and, of course, more expensive. It is not the case, however, that I haven't had a couple of representatives say to me that, this death penalty is just part of a bigger picture of reform that is needed in the system. And so I have had those comments made, but I think that the people who have made those comments to me, and that would be, a constitutional amendment and also some overhaul of criminal justice system, they realize the magnitude of the task. So I would just say that we have a better chance with a repeal in the State House. We did have one more question.
Oh, did we? Okay. Cool.
It says one inside strategy might be a coalition e-newsletter to the legislators regarding the topic, so they would be more informed, and this may already be taking place. And that's true. We have done one, I think, back in the fall, and another one's in the works right now. But it's a very good idea, and I appreciate that comment. Thank you.